All right, we will open the public hearing for the Commissioner's 2022 budget. And ask the Commissioners to give the budget presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, representatives. Nice to see everyone. Hope you're well. So the Board of Commissioners has completed their budget for fiscal year 2022. And I just want to point out a few things before we start the bullet point presentation, which will be brief. And once completed, the department heads will come up individually and present their individual budgets. And I would encourage one and all to ask as many questions as possible. It's a great opportunity to do so tonight. So the budget submitted for 2022 compared to fiscal year 2021 is 5.6% higher than last year's budget as submitted. As I'm sure you all know, the rate of inflation across the country now is 6.7%. We attribute those increases to a lot of factors. A significant one is the change in administration in Washington, lingering pandemic, and this has caused a spiral of expenses for all of us. My friend and former colleague, Representative Silber, noted correctly that the budget we're submitting to you tonight, if accepted line by line, would result in a increase in the county share of the tax bill for Belknap County residents of 36%. I want to just go over the precise tax consequences of that increase. If you're a Belknap County resident and you own a home that's assessed at $300,000, the increase in your tax bill would be $117. So that's where we are with these numbers. As I'm sure you all know as well, one of our particular departments here, the nursing home, has been in a state of crisis. A good portion of the increase in this request is based on the needs of the nursing home in Belknap County. So if no one has any particular questions at this moment, we can begin the slideshow and go over that briefly. I assume you all have your packets. So if you can just go from top to bottom and make sure that you have those pages. And if you have any questions, we go over them, please ask, because we're here to answer them. As you can see on the summary page, on page 3, last year's operating expenses were $31,648,039. The Board of Commissioners have requested a budget for 2022 of $33,381,273. These numbers, as submitted, do not include any application of the fund balance. On the next page, we have a brief explanation of what the board feels is driving the increase in taxes. And at the top of the list is, of course, the loss of the said fund balance applied to the tax rate. And if you go further down those bullet points, there are some additional explanations. And I think that they're fairly self-explanatory. The capital projects, we decided to remove them from the operational budget for now as a set aside. And those projects are expected to be funded over the next 2 years, or I should say the next 3 years, with the remaining ARPA fund balance. And I want to particularly call your attention to the final bullet point there. The net nursing home cost has been held to $1.3 million, which is a fairly small portion of total tax requirements. Does anyone have any particular questions? Does everyone have these particular pages. Is there anything you'd like us to elaborate on before we go further?
On the spreadsheet anyway, with all the columns, whatever column says, the 21 budget, adopted budget, the other one says 21 revised budget. What's the difference between those two columns?
Any transfers that happened in between there. There was the original adopted budget and then it's revised by transfers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative O'Hara.
Just a quick question, I just was wondering why there wasn't a fund balance plan for 2022.
Why was there no fund balance applied? Because the commissioners have a policy that the county will maintain between $3.5 and $5 million of fund balance. We are expecting to have about 2.6 million by the end of this year. So they didn't feel they had any to apply in accordance with their own policy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions?
Mr. Chairman, seeing that there are no further questions from the delegation at large, I'd like to call it the department heads individually. And again, I urge all of you while we're here and while the heads are here tonight to ask any questions that may come to mind. There's no such thing as an irrelevant question in my view. So first up, I'd like to call up the county attorney, Mr. Livernoise.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you all. As you know, I'm Andrew Livernoise. I'm the county attorney here in Belknap County, and I appreciate you considering my budget this evening. As you can probably see when you look at my budget, I have a fairly substantial increase this year, which is unusual for me. And the reason for that is because I'm asking for 2 additional attorney positions in my office. And I recognize from the start that that is a big request. And that represents a fairly significant increase to my budget. I've not made this decision lightly, however. I believe that our office has a serious problem with regard to the caseload that we're facing and the number of cases each of my attorneys is required to handle. I submitted to all of you individually a somewhat detailed analysis in a letter that I submitted to you back in September of this year. I hope you all still have that and remember that. I can get you copies of it if you don't. But in that detailed letter that I sent to all of you, I gave you the supporting data to show the problem that we face in this county and how long this problem has been going on. The last time I took a snapshot of how many active cases my office is handling, we're handling approximately 700 cases at a time. Divided by the 5 attorneys in my office, including myself, I have 4 assistants and myself, that comes out to about 140 cases per attorney. And that is simply an unacceptably high number of cases per attorney. As you know, the police department brings me cases. They bring me felony cases. My attorneys review those cases and we decide whether there is enough evidence to charge a felony case in those cases. And if there is, we do. But I don't control the flow of cases that come to me. The police department brings them to me and I feel I have a duty to prosecute those cases we can prosecute. And so as a result, my caseload has gotten very, very large and has for a long time. Why is this? There's several reasons. One is when you look at the number of attorneys we have in my office per capita, it is very low. Many other counties have 1 assistant county attorney for every 10,000 citizens. Some have an assistant county attorney for every 9,000. I have 1 assistant county attorney for every 12,000. As a result, we have fewer assistant county attorneys per capita than many other counties do. And in addition, we have a very high number of cases coming in from the police departments. And this has caused this caseload problem. It's been going on for many years. And the problem that causes is that my attorneys then have to go into triage mode. We can't spend as much time as we'd like to spend on each individual case to give them the attention they deserve. And as a result, we can't get the sort of justice that is always required. We have to cut corners, which isn't acceptable. We're not able to spend as much time with victims as we'd like to be able to. We're not able to spend enough time investigating our cases, studying the evidence, preparing for trial. These are very important things. So as a result, I don't think we're able to give the quality product that the citizens of this county deserve. And so that's why we need additional assistant county attorneys. The Attorney General's office recommends that Attorney General's offices carry, and that county attorney's offices carry a caseload of between 75 and 100 cases per attorney. And we're up to about 140 cases per attorney. We cannot continue this way. And so we have two choices. We can either hire more assistant county attorneys to help do this job, or I have to find other ways to reduce our caseload, which means I'm going to have to start deciding perhaps that certain types of cases simply can't be prosecuted in this county because we don't have the resources to do it. And that to me is simply unacceptable. You know, the administration of justice is one of the key governmental responsibilities that we have, and we simply need to fund it. And so that's why I'm asking you to support me in these two additional positions. When you go through my budget, basically all of the increases in my budget are from these two increased positions and all the various costs that flow out for everyone. So when you increase the wages, you have to pay more in taxes, you have to pay more in retirement. So obviously these costs flow down through my budget in various ways. So that is, in a brief nutshell, is why I'm asking for what I'm asking, and I urge you to please support me. Other questions?
Representative Silver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Livernoy. Can you give us, my understanding is that you only prosecute felonies other than homicides, is that correct?
That is correct.
Follow up? Could you give us a breakdown by category of felonies in the past 12 months of what your office has been handling?
I don't have an exact figure for that. I can get you that.
That's, yes, I understand that. Your November 13 letter is, or your November letter is in here, but it doesn't have a breakdown of the particular categories of felonies. So if you're talking about the possibility of having to decline to prosecute certain types of offenses, I think it might be helpful for the delegation to see what kind of offenses you are prosecuting.
So I can certainly get to that. I'd be happy to get to that.
Great, thank you.
Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Livernoy, is this essentially a new or first-time request for additional assistant county attorneys, or is there a history on this? And if there's a history, what has the history been with respect to your request in this delegation?
This is the first time I've requested additional county attorneys since I've been in office. I've been in office since August of 2017. So this is now my fourth year in office, and this is the first time I've asked for additional county attorneys.
Follow up, please. Yeah, and what's the driver on that with respect to previous years?
One of the large drivers of this is back in 2016, there's a number of drivers, but one is that back in 2016, the legislature changed the way that cases go through the criminal court system. They enacted something called Felonies First, which requires that all felony cases start out in superior court and none go to district court first. So a lot of these cases that my office is now handling used to get handled in district court by local prosecutors prior to indictment, and they could be pled out or dealt with in district court. That's no longer the case. All those cases now come to my office and have to be handled in my office. So that was a large driver of this. And we saw this coming back in 2016. My predecessor, I believe, saw this coming and had asked for one additional county attorney back in 2016. But the numbers have proven that was not enough. I think the other thing driving this is the continuing issues that we have in this county with substance abuse. We continue to see large numbers of arrests and prosecutions in this county because of substance abuse, and that problem is simply not going away. It is an ongoing crisis. So I think those are the two main drivers of this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Thank you for the presentation.
Briefly touch on the case backlog.
Representative Floyd.
I will take the questions and once the question.
Oh, sure.
Please cover that. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, thank you. Do you see this as a limited need of two, or you're going to have an idea that these two new attorneys you're asking for are going to be held on over time?
It is hard to know. there's always a chance that demographically things could change and the crime rate could go down substantially and there could be less need for prosecutors in the future. I tend to doubt that, given the overall growth of the county, our population growth over time, and the trends that I have seen. I think it is likely we'll need these two positions ongoing forever. But if by some chance we got to a situation where I simply didn't need them and our case numbers were very low, then I could see eventually we could come back and talk about reducing our numbers, but I don't see that as likely anytime in the near future.
Follow up? So this is because of the cases brought forward to your office,
Correct.
not because of the backup in the courts because of COVID?
Well, that is another issue which I also would like to address, because that is, I think, exacerbated this problem a bit. But if you look at the statistical numbers which I provided, I went back 4 years, and we have been consistently higher than all of the other counties in our cohort. When you look at the 6 counties in the bottom half, Carroll, Coos, Sullivan, Belknap, Cheshire, Grafton. We are in the middle of that cohort demographically. The smallest county has about 30,000. The largest county has about 90,000. We have about 60,000. Yet despite the fact that we're in the middle, we have the most cases of any of those counties. We file more cases in Belknap County than they do in counties which have 90,000 people. And this problem has been ongoing since before I took office. But to answer your question, yes, the pandemic has exacerbated this, because what it has done is it has created a backlog, basically. We've been unable to try very many cases for the past year. And so it's creating this large bubble of cases that need to be managed, where cases are still coming to us. Police departments are still making arrests. We still have to process those cases, get them ready for trial, prepare them, but yet the trials aren't happening. And so the overall case numbers are starting to swell. It's creating this artificial bubble. And that's exacerbating the problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further?
Nothing. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wouldn't have been asking me that. I apologize.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, folks. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Register of Deeds. Judith McGrath is here. Judith,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Brief overview, the Registry of Deeds records documents as they pertain to land records in Belknap County. Primarily, we record deeds, mortgages, plans, discharges of mortgage, along with many other types of documents. The office is basically volume driven. Anticipated revenues and expenses are based on current year averages. 2021 has been a very strong year. With regards to the revenue, total anticipated revenue for 2022 is set at just over 1.348 million. Revenues making up this figure include real estate transfer tax, recording revenue, special equipment fund reimbursement, and township fees. The special equipment reimbursement line of $34,025 reflects offsetting expense entries for the hardware lease, copier lease, and new equipment, specifically a roller shelving unit. The current year-to-date revenue for the 11 months through November of this year, we have brought in just over 1.26 million. This surpasses the 1.141 million we anticipated in the 2021 budget. As far as expenses go, because the office is volume driven, increases are reflected in specific expense lines that are based on volume. These would include the indexing line. 2021 volume is up significantly. We anticipate docket counts to be up by over 4,000. Microfilming would be another line. That would be the archival preservation of document images, and that is up by approximately 30,000 images. The wage line reflects cost of 2 full-time staff members. I would like to note that we do have the smallest registry staff in the state. So the total proposed operating budget is $430,500. Anticipated revenue at $1.348 million, with net revenue to the county of approximately $900,000. Thank you for your time. And I can answer any questions.
Questions? You keep a tight budget, Tom, Representative Boucher.
Yes, in the revenues, was there any increases in fees or anything?
As far as recording fees, no, those
Okay,
are set by the state.
so it was just the volume.
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner, which you anticipate to coming off a very strong. This is something you share with us at one of the meetings.
Right, the 1.348 million.
Yes, yes.
So the 1.348 million in anticipated revenue would be based on averages year to date. The real estate transfer tax along with recording revenues would be somewhere around 1.3 million. We also have, as I mentioned before, the $34,025, which is a special equipment line reimbursement, and that is higher than previous years because we're offsetting copier lease in new equipment as well as the hardware lease, which is an acceptable cost to take out of that special equipment reimbursement line. The other significant increase is the 4% commission we get on the LCHIP fees, which we're anticipating will be around $14,000.
Representative Johnson?
Can you tell me what page that you're talking about on this? What are these pages here? So I'm getting a little lost on.
So that's the revenue, the revenue line.
Page 5.
Dawn, page 5.
Okay. I have multiple sheets here and I was trying to.
I'll take all of our revenue first.
So anything else for, Grath? Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Next up, we have Sheriff Wright to discuss the budget.
Good evening. So earlier in this month, I sent out emails to each and every one of you with the memorandum that I sent to the commissioners when I presented my budget to them and the reasons why. In that memo, I broke down every single line that I have in my budget and any increases or decreases or any explanation that I thought was necessary to explain why or where I was at with the future of my budget requests. So there's a few things that I kind of wanted to mention today, and it has to do with the increases that I've asked for this year in my budget. And a couple of the notable locations are predominantly in wages. They're wages full-time, which is line number 51,120. I've asked for $57,555 to be increased in that line. And part of that is I am asking for another deputy sheriff to be hired this year. Back in 2005 was the last time that we had a new created position for deputy sheriff full-time at the sheriff's department. I was actually that hire back in July of 05. As you know, crime has not gone down in our county, and we do support that function. So part of that $57,500 is for a full-time deputy, as well as the union contractual raises for the full-time employees that are currently there for that full-time line. Part-time wages, line 51,220. I've asked for $22,736.24. That also is covering some of the hours that are designated now for mandated training for our part-time staff. I currently have 21 part-time deputies that are employed by us. Those deputies, of course, are per diem, so they only get paid when they work. But there are certain requirements that are there, at least a minimum of 24 hours of additional training, as well as our firearms training, which equals 8 hours. And some of those people are part of specialty teams, such as the BRAVE team, the Belknap Regional Accident Investigation Team, the BSOG team, which is the local SWAT team, and then we use some of these people as well for our Belknap Regional Drug Task Force. So they can augment some of our staff, as well as we have some that we rely on as to fill a full-time position that we've had for many years. In the wages, part-time for court, that's a significant increase. Part of that increase is due to the courts, basically opening up full. Not to mention that we're actually looking at having 2 judges at the Belknap County Superior Court. They are during those times. So for 100 days, there's 247 days. I rounded it up in the memo to 250 just for simplicity. But out of those days, 150 days are 1 judge, and 100 days are 2 judges. That means that we need to increase our staff by at least 2 bailiffs or deputies down at the courthouse just to run the second courtroom. And not to mention that we've been running on a skeleton crew down there for security. And that's part of my responsibility as stated in the RSAs, is that I need to make sure that we have adequate security in our courthouses here in Belknap County. And we've determined that we need to start employing more people to do some of these security processes down at that court. Now, out of this $214,000 that I've asked for additional funding, a majority of that money is reimbursed through the state. So again, it's as we employ these people, we're reimbursed for those hours as well. But I have asked for an increase in the daily pay that we pay these people. Right now, we're currently paying our personnel at a rate of just over $120 a day. That's for an 8-hour day at the courthouse, and we're reimbursed at that exact rate. I'm going to be asking for them to be actually paid at a $150 rate. We believe that it's time for them to have that caveat, as it's getting harder to hire people at $120 a day. So we want that investment. So out of that $150, $120 of that will be reimbursed through the state AOC. I've also asked for a $15,000 increase on the special ops line, which is 53905. And part of that reasoning is last year was this year right now, we're currently operating, it was a maintenance budget. We knew that there was going to be some equipment needs for the team, and that was going to be coming up for this year. So that's why I've asked for that money. My training line, 56,110. I've asked for an additional $7,800 in that. I have 6 brand new supervisors within my department. I need to get those people trainings, supervisory trainings, not to mention that the personnel that I do have at my department, luckily we hire people who are already trained and already certified in areas and that have an extensive amount of time on the job. And as a relation to that, we need to continue to challenge our people with advanced training and provide the county, the other county departments with us being their resource to help them when they have specialized situations going on. So I've asked for that to be increased. Our uniform line 56,115, I've asked for an additional $4,500 to be put into that line. And part of that is because we have some aging gear that we need to replace. This year, with the line that I had in my budget, I've been able to get everybody at least in the same color uniform. So it's time for us to now start upgrading and updating some of the equipment that we have on personnel that it's just been overlooked for a lot of years, and I'm into uniformity. So It's time for us to buy them new pants and new shirts and new jackets and so on and so forth. So that's why that's there. I did put a request for a new line in for public relations. That's line 56201. I've asked for that to be set at $2,000. Part of that is I probably run one of the most public chief law enforcement offices in our county. And part of that is when we have national night outs, when we have open houses, when we go to these different parades and events, all that, any of the funds that are provided come basically out of my pocket or my employees' pockets. I believe that this should be, we represent the county, and we should be accessible just like other police departments and have an actual line that's accountable to what we're doing and be able to provide these things for our community. Another big item in my budget is a vehicle in the vehicle lease line, which is $57,600. I've asked for $41,954, and that's to lease 3 new cruisers. I have several cruisers that are very aged. We continue to drive them because we have to, but they are patrol rated vehicles, and we need to keep up with being ready to be able to act if we need to. We not worry about our vehicles being broken down when we're traveling out of state extraditions and things like that. So I've asked for an increase in that line for that specific reason. That's the highlights of the generic reasons for the major increases in my budget. I'm open for any questions.
Representative Boris.
Yeah, I'm looking at your 51120, the wages. So you can tell me a full-time deputy makes $39,156 a year, or $18.25 an hour.
Well, that would be if we were to hire that person April 1st. So if you were to, divide that up. And we go based on the union scale.
That's a union scale? Right? $18 an hour, a little over $18 an hour.
Well, I think it's closer to 20 when you start looking at it's $20 to $21 an hour, I believe is what we start our deputies out at. So you add that extra 4 months.
I was curious on that aspect, it just seemed a little light. No, I didn't.
Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question on your estimated revenues.
Yes.
There's no number on joint operations?
Yes, we terminated our partnership this year with the U.S. Marshals. So the joint operations was us working with the U.S. Marshals. What you will see is, because you don't see the joint operations having a revenue, you'll also see the same $17,000 removed from my overtime budget, because that's where the expense came from.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sheriff, for taking my question. I'm going to your line item, court security. As you mentioned, it's a huge difference between what you're expecting in for revenues versus what we're paying on over $160,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's
Is that-
employing 9 deputies for 100 days, or it's 9 deputies for 150 days and 11 for the 100 days.
Hold on, please.
So that's an increase in staff.
Okay, so I understand the increase in staff. Wouldn't the revenues, 1, help reflect the increase in staff, and 2, you also mentioned that you're putting in for a pay raise for them in this line item, is that correct?
Yes, so back in July, there was a rate change within the AOC reimbursement rate. It went from $95 to $120. So that was instantly added, that pay rate was instantly added to their pay rate for the remainder of the year. So those increases are found in this year's budget, as well as the additional $30 a day per employee per 250 days that we would have the courts open. And that was the reason for that. So the county does lose some money from the revenue side of the house, because it's not the same. We're paying out 150 and they would be receiving 120. So we lose $30 a day per employee for the 250 days.
Thank you.
Representative Silver.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Sheriff. not too long ago, the delegation approved allocating more than $1 million of ARPA funds to your department for a new communication system.
Yes.
And the question is whether there's any items on your proposed expense budget that would qualify for funding from ARPA.
I really can't answer that. I'm not familiar with what expenses would be covered through ARPA.
For example, the cruisers, tangible items, things like that.
I mean, I think it would be. I know that there's been discussions in past meetings that cruisers and things could be covered by that.
So that if it was covered by ARPA, it would be out of the expense budget.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Howard, one more question, if you don't mind. Under outside details, you're showing a revenue of 65,000, but yet in the cost side, it's only looking 47.5.
Yes.
That,
So the expense side of the house pays the deputies. So the deputies get paid out of that line. The revenue side is what covers, so that covers the deputies' pay. So the 47.5 would be equal to that. The additional funds that you find in the revenue line covers the cruisers, maintenance, and any other administrative fees. And what I mean by fees is the tax, the payroll taxes, any retirement or anything else. So basically a paid detail is completely covered, like the liabilities of that is completely covered by that. So your revenue side will always be higher than your expense side because that expense side only covers or is only showing the payment to the deputies.
we're still on the plus side overall.
Yes. And the county commissioners have the ability to raise the rate if they detect that we're actually being underpaid, if you will, as the county. So we should never, ever lose money on an outside paid detail. So we should always be on the 0 or fairly short plus side of the house on that.
Thank you. Representative Conklin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to follow up on Representative Howard. So I understand this correctly. On the outside detail of $65,000, those expenses are then found in the outside detail line, the payroll tax line, and the retirement line.
I believe so.
Would that be
Yep.
correct? So there is really no income to the county, but it's a net zero, basically.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Right. And I couldn't be 100% sure that we don't make $1 or $2 off each detail. I don't know that because if we employ, so deputies are all paid at the same rate of pay. So they, union contract is $50 an hour to work an outside detail. On that $50, we charge, I believe it's $70 per process. So every hour is $70 an hour for that outside detail. If we have a part-time employee that works that detail, they still get paid at the same rate of pay of $50, but the county does not have to pay the same rates to like payroll taxes or retirement or other things that are kind of not in my wheelhouse. But I know that there's other things that are paid for, but we always recoup what we spend out.
Yes, please, thank you, thank you. So what you're saying is everyone gets paid a $50 fee, $50 an hour for their outside detail.
Yes.
Payroll taxes would be the same whether they're part-time or full-time, correct?
Mhm.
So basically, and do you also charge for their health benefits, which is a part of their wages? Do you charge for all of that other stuff? So really there is, because they're getting paid and that's part of the cost of them as an employee, correct?
Retirement is the thing that makes the difference. So the part-time officers, we don't pay retirement, but we are recouping enough money to cover retirement. So that is where the county makes money on the outside detail. Is every time a part-time officer who is not in the retirement system works an outside detail, the county makes money on that.
So what you're saying is on the part-time people, you still charge the retirement fee?
That's right.
No, so, excuse, I didn't understand the question. Could you repeat the question? I didn't quite understand what.
The question I just asked was, so we still charge, included in the fee that we charge for the outside detail is the retirement fee, even on a part-time person?
Sorry, right, yeah. It's a flat fee.
for detail.
Further questions for the sheriff?
Can I give you 1 minute? I have a question. I just want to make sure I answer.
I'm gonna do my math too.
Sorry. So I'll start my question, maybe you can answer it. So if I understand I'm gonna go back to the security officers, I just wanna make sure I understand what we're talking about here. So you want 150 days with 9 people being paid at $150 an hour, then you want another 100 days with 11 people.
Right.
And so that equals a total of 2,450 days total of compensation that we have to deal with at $50 an hour. I mean, $150 an hour,
Yes,
right? And
that's
right, there is 2,450 days worth of man hours, however you want to classify that, right? There are people working that are getting paid $150 per diem for that, each one of those days, which comes out to the 412, a little bit different number, but $412,000. However, about 82,000 of that we're not gonna get reimbursed for. That's us increasing the rate from 120 to 250, but we're not asking the state to cover that increase. We're
the 120 to 150.
120 to 150 for all those days.
And that we increased our staffing as well for some of the days.
Right, I got 9 and 11 of the two
Yes.
other counts, right? So depending on how, we had the one judge or two judges in.
Right.
So again, so it's $83,000 is what we're looking at in unreimbursed costs for that line item.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Not at the moment, but I'm sure that I will have more when it comes down the pipe.
All right.
Yes, and my chief deputy just reminded me, there is a different reimbursement. So 3 people a day, and I have it all listed in here. So 3 of our bailiffs or deputies that work in the custody and control portion of the courthouse. So that's in the basement dealing with a prisoner. They get reimbursed at a rate right now of $65 a day. So right now we're paying them $120 a day. So there's already that loss, if you will, by the county. And then we are saying if we're gonna pay the other deputies or bailiffs $150 a day, we need to increase that rate as well. So it spreads the rate out a little bit more. So that's why some of the numbers in here, as I've actually listed out here, show what the reimbursement rates would be and how we would recover that amount of money. Now, I do know that there is a bill right now that's being reworked, and it's I don't remember it's put in by Senator Hennessy, in that it's that they're trying to get the reimbursement rate to be equal to what the AOC contract is, which is the 120 a day. So that would be for custody and control or perimeter and security, it didn't matter. So that would automatically be more revenue than what I am anticipating with this presentation today. I can't guarantee on that unless it gets approved, so.
You know the bill number?
I can look it up. Give me just a second.
So we can all go support it?
It's, right now it's S-3035. And it's called Relative to Reimbursement of Sheriff's Office for Prisoner and Custody Control.
That's gonna be a rule, so it's not a jump.
I know Senator Hennessy had asked for some of the representatives to come on board with it. So I know it's been submitted, and a few of our representatives have actually, part of this delegation have signed on. So hopefully it'll pass and we can recoup some more of that money.
Okay, anything further for the sheriff? Thank you very much.
My door is always open, my phones are always on, and I have email. You all know how to get in contact with me, please. If you got a question, ask. My door's open. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Our facilities manager, Dustin Mussey, is here this evening to go to.
Good evening, everyone, for having me. I'll be discussing the maintenance budget for the county. most of you know, the maintenance budget, covers the cost of utilities, materials, supplies, labor, equipment, to keep the physical plant, buildings, and grounds maintained throughout the year. 2022 budget, includes wages and benefits for full-time employees, myself, 2 folks.
Ask you to speak up, please.
Superior Courthouse, and we have another staff member. Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. And then another staff member that takes care of maintenance at the jail and community correction center. I'll highlight some of the noteworthy increases in my budget. Of course, increases in wages and benefits are driven by contractual obligations and increased cost of health insurance. Cleaning services, that is a projected increase in the cost of that contract. Currently, we work with Joyce Janitorial. They've mentioned increasing our contract costs so that they can keep current with current wages to secure and maintain their own employees. Contracted services, there's an increase in that line item. It's mostly small increases between 3 and 5%. The only significant increase is with our contractor for our sprinkler system. We have one test that we do once every 5 years here at this facility, which adds about $800 to that line item, part of the budget. Electricity, there's a slight increase on the supply side from Eversource. The electricity budget, we got a 2-year contract for the kilowatt rate per hour, so that will not change. Our most significant increase in my budget is in heating fuel. That's for an additional $17,000. Our natural gas prices are up 35%. Contract that that expires November of 2021. Heating fuel oil, that is up 49%. Paid 2021, our rate was $1.60 per gallon. 2022, we're going to be paying with this heating season $2.39 per gallon. So that was a significant increase to our budget. Slight increase in water and sewer. It's just based on our consumption this year. We anticipate similar year next year, same consumption. There aren't any increases for the water department or for the sewer rate. Building improvements, primarily that is for to improve flooring, coverings at the district court. We haven't, not the district, the Superior Court. On the second floor in County Attorney's Office, we replaced some of that carpeting this year in County Attorney. In general, that carpet throughout the building is between 15 and 20 years old. Pretty well worn, and we maintain it, but it doesn't look a lot better after we maintain it because of the age and wear. And then we have $10,000 scheduled for improvements to the lower parking lot here. It's our staff parking lot primarily. Pretty significantly cracked. Some of the asphalt needs to be replaced, but it's not a full overlay or a full paving job. It's crack sealing, pavement restoration, and restriping. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Representative O'Hara.
More of a curiosity question. When was the last time that the cleaning went out for bid?
What is that?
The cleaning service one, it's the last time it went out for like a bid?
It's been at least 3 years. When we did that out before, we had two companies respond. The low bidder worked with us for about a year. We had pretty significant issues with their staff showing up. They finally backed away from the contract, felt they couldn't service us, So they left the contract, and then we were able to hire Joyce Janitorial. So that's a contract that could go back out to bid here in the near future.
I guess, contracted services, if we go back to actually, your first line says that it was increased slightly, but the increase is actually 34%. It went from 50,000 to 67, $13,000 increase. If I'm looking at the right line item.
Contracted services is about
So hold on.
20,
Sorry, I was in the nursing home. Contracted services. You're okay.
Further questions? Thank you, Dustin.
Excuse me,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chairman, Dustin, before you step
Yes.
down, if you could just briefly, while we have a captive audience, describe what happened at the sheriff's department on those two natural disasters and what steps you took to prevent a recurrence and what the cost will be for next year.
Yeah, we had a couple of sewer line issues. It affected the sheriff's department because they have the lowest drains in the building. They have 2 showers, floor level. So when we had a backup to that section, the first place it showed itself was coming up out of the showers, which is at floor level. So it spread across the floor into offices, got on the carpets. It's a real nuisance. It's the first time we took care of the problem with our own staff. In other words, we thought we cleared the line. We had the line moving again. We had the flow. We had the flooding down. We did quite an extensive amount of cleaning, but we also called in a professional cleaning company that came in and treated the floors with antimicrobial disinfectant, extracted carpets, and so forth. Everything worked great for about 6 weeks, and it happened again. This time, some things that we were more informed about from the backup was that before they noticed, it happened early in the morning naturally. The dispatch noticed first that they got a smell of bleach or soap or what have you. And so when we got here to clean up, which is about 6 or 7 o'clock, we got the line flowing again, but weren't confident that we had the block cleared. So Raul Septic, they came in, they cambered the lines. What they found was a section of cast iron pipe. The building's old enough that the sewer line was cast iron. Of course, everything's under the slab. It was out here in the hallway, but it backed up from that point, and laundry starts about 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So as soon as they get those washers going and that goes to dump the water from the loads, that's why dispatch was smelling soap and bleach and so forth. And so we investigated those lines, the line in the hallway, the line that comes from this administrative wing here and the sheriff's department. They repaired the main line, which had, the lower 2/3 of the pipe was rotted out. What was happening is it was letting the fill around it, clean fill around it back into the pipe and clogging it up. What made it worse was grease from the kitchen, residue grease from laundry, just making a hard mass in the pipe and causing the problem. So we've had the pipe slip lined. They put a polymer balloon down in the pipe. They flow hot water around it, cures it, creates a pipe inside of the pipe. And they also did the 2 Ys from the sheriff's department and nursing home coming into the main. The main runs out through the hall here, through the maintenance door, and then off-site about 300 feet to the nearest manhole. So with that, I think we've got that problem resolved. But it was at a cost about $14,000 for that repair, plus another $4,000 for flooring that we need to replace at the sheriff's department, plus cleaning services. So it was a significant event that we did not have to repeat.
Is there any insurance coverage that we would claim on that?
The claims have been submitted and so far denied.
Okay. Okay.
So we're working on it, it's not promised.
President Johnson?
And we use, so all the, sorry, are all the sewer lines now fixed and repaired properly?
The ones that were that were compromised are fixed.
Okay, because if we have, do we know if we need to look into the others to make sure this is not gonna happen again? Because I know the sewer lines, they're old, they go without
Yeah,
question.
we should make a project of doing an inspection of the sewer lines in the oldest part of the building. The newer part of the building, the two additions to the nursing home were done in 94, 95. I'm fairly confident that's done with plastic pipe and not cast iron, but we should make a project of looking at our old lines to make sure that we don't have compromised lines anywhere else. That area there that became compromised is pretty heavily scoured and used because of laundry, but it was also it's in the same general area where at one time those lines went out to a septic system that we no longer have, so there's been a bunch of work in that general area. Yeah, that's a good point.
Can we use some of the ARPA funds to look into that?
Certainly.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
Any further questions? Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you all very much. From Restorative Justice, we have Director McFadden to answer your questions tonight.
Good evening, everyone. In the letter that I submitted to you, that should be in each of your books, I went through all of my discretionary spending line by line, and there are 7 of them. The rest of my budget is non-discretionary, which consists of payroll, federal taxes, workers' compensation, and other fees that are predetermined. The biggest expense in my budget this year is I'm asking to reinstate the funding for the case manager that was defunded as a result of the 2021 budget. And as you've heard the county attorney speak to you about the increased caseload, the floors opening up, that is going to trickle down to my office, and it is going to bring us back to at least pre-COVID caseloads. And if that happens, I can't handle it with just 2 case managers. I'm going to need that 3rd case manager. It's not a new position. I'm just asking for reinstatement of the funds for that defunded position from the 2021 budget. All of the other increases that I asked for are based on the rate of inflation. And basically I stayed level budget spending with what you gave me in 2021 with just the rate of inflation increase for each of those lines. And there are a couple of lines that show decrease. For instance, postage I decreased because as a result of COVID, one of the good things is the agencies that we work with that used to not electronically transmit documents are not doing that. So that has cut my postage drastically. So we're doing the majority of our mailings and document transfers electronically. So that's a big savings that way. So you'll see a decrease in the postage request. Any questions?
Questions? You are free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. In corrections, we have Superintendent Adam Cunningham to make his presentation.
Good evening. So I'm not going to talk about everything that I put in the memorandum that I submitted to the commissioners that you should have a copy about tonight, but I want to talk about some significant changes in my budget this year. And I'm going to start with one that's going to pop out is we now have a contracted medical services line of $752,000. This year, the commissioners agreed and voted, and we changed how medical is paid for and delivered through at the Department of Corrections. We privatized the whole medical and mental health system. So in the memo, I have kind of broken down all the categories that had in previous years' budgets, you would have seen line itemed out, including nursing staff, nursing overtime, our contract with the doctors, MAT, medical supplies, mental health services, contract nurses, and other expenses related to the medical department. Those are all now being funded through that contracted medical services line. And so to give you an idea, for 2022, if I had presented you a budget that had all of those items in those historical lines, that would have totaled somewhere nearing $891,000. So our medical services, not only have our medical services stabilized, and I haven't had to, fortunately, I haven't had to bring forth the issues with getting nursing coverage. The request for an additional nurse that I made last year to the delegation, we now have sufficient nursing staff, sufficient medical coverage, and we have an increase in our mental health coverage, which has been particularly helpful this year, as we've had some very significant mental health cases come through the jail and still persist to this day. So I just want to point out that where you do see one very large line item, it's because there's been reductions in a number of other line items. I guess my big ask this year is for an additional correctional officer. Currently, to maintain our staffing levels, our current staffing levels, we utilize about 60 hours of part-time help, part-time correctional officer help in our schedule every week. These are scheduled part-time shifts. This year, we have had, we went from having about 7 part-time people. We are now down to 4. 3 of my part-time people are retired and have been so for quite a while. I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be with us. So the request this year is to convert 40 of those hours that we schedule every week from part-time to full-time status. And so what I did was we reduced the part-time wage line item $40,000, which is the same number of hours. That's how much we pay our part-timers. And the anticipated increase this year for going to a full-time person is $60,000. That include, or $60,000 is change. The exact numbers are in the memo. And that will cover the wages, retirement, taxes, and medical benefits for that. What that's going to do is it's going to provide us stability in our scheduling. As I'm sure you're aware, part-timers do not have to come to work. If they don't want to work, by the graces, we've done okay. However, as my part-timers have started to dwindle, we have had 0 applications for those part-time positions this year. On that note, staffing has been a challenge this year. Some of the other increases that you'll see in my budget is I have an increase to the training line. We've had about a 40% turnover in correctional staff this year. Fortunately, we've actually turned them over, and we are sitting almost fully staffed right at this moment in time. It's been a roller coaster every year. So that's kind of where we are with staffing. But the increase of the training line is I have brand new people that have never been in this career field. They've had no experience, and we need to have the training opportunities so that we can have them be professional, and it keeps the liability for the county down when you have properly trained people doing that position. Another change that you'll see this year is corrections. The corrections opportunity for recovery, better known as CORE. It was put out to bid this year for services. We had one company, Horizons, which was our provider. They were the only bid. You'll see a significant reduction in the core services line as the new contract is now for $128,000 instead of $230,000 as it was, with no increases for the next 3 years. Some of the new budget line items, they're not big budget line items. However, I want to specifically speak to them. I've asked for $1,000 of employee recognition. Employee recognition, you heard the sheriff talk about spending money out of our own pockets. And I know that Director Richardson, although she won't tell you this, spends a significant amount of her own money to recognize staff. With a 40% turnover, that's very costly to the county. So I'm asking to have a little bit of discretionary money so that through the year we can do immediate on-site recognition of staff and hopefully not see the 40% turnover next year. As just sending one officer through the academy costs us $550. There are a couple of new line items: software support and barber services are two of them. Barber services, we have to hire a licensed barber to come in. No, they don't get fancy updos or hair coloring. It's just for a basic haircut. That's reimbursed by the inmates. So that comes out of the inmate funds when they get the haircut, but we have to have a mechanism in which to pay the barber. That was previously being done under that medical services line. So you'll see a new line item for that. And then software support is for the online, it's a cloud-based management system or a data management system that pretrial services uses. That was previously paid through restorative justice, and it had never been transferred over when we took pretrial services under the corrections department. Let's see. In terms of equipment increases this year, what I'm asking for is we're asking for just under $6,000 to add additional monitors for the master control system. For those of you that have been in there, there's 4 large monitors in that room already. I know it seems like a lot, but they have to get another server to run 2 more monitors. We currently have about 101 cameras, and when you shrink the screens down to about this big, we can put 60 of those 100 on the system at any one time. So this would give us the ability to monitor actually all of our cameras in real time, and then up some of the more critical cameras to a larger size where we can actually distinguish some of those smaller movements. In those cases, there are things like our observation cells where we're watching people for suicidal behaviors or they're detoxing for drugs, so we can respond immediately. The other one is for our server upgrade. All of our door locks are electronically controlled. That server was upgraded in 2017 when they built the new building. That server is no longer being supported because Microsoft Windows has now moved on. That software is old. They're going to have to upgrade the equipment. To do so, we are experiencing more and more door failures. And when we have a door failure, that means nobody's moving anywhere, including in an emergency, until we go break out keys. So that's going to be, a server upgrade is going to be about $7,500. Additionally, I've asked for $5,600 for new conducted energy devices that are known as the TASER. We currently have 3. All of my staff is trained to carry the TASER. However, we don't have enough for everybody to have one. And that's the kind of tool that actually, when you have a planned incident or you know that you're going to be going into a situation, it's fine to be sharing or going back to the office to get the TASER. But when officers are faced with a violent situation and they're there, they don't have time to go back to the office, put that person on hold. I'm going to go get my TASER. I'll be right back with you. So this is to get us up to where everybody who's working that shift has the ability to wear the tool that they've been trained to use. $4,600 has been requested for a new floor cleaning machine. Our floor cleaning machine is broken. It has a leak in the tank. The batteries are old. It's going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1,800 to repair a machine that's 5 years old, no longer in warranty. The new machine would run roughly about $4,600. Our current machine is undersized for the facility. It was designed for about a facility half our size, so it just doesn't have the cleaning power that the proper size machine would have. And then the last thing I've requested for this year, I'm sorry, not the last thing. One more is I've requested $5,000 for an inmate work crew trailer. What that is a like landscape style trailer with a porta potty. and then the appropriate equipment on that trailer to utilize sentenced inmates to go out and do community-based projects where we would be contained to do that. So we can do things that would actually benefit the citizens of Belknap County with those that are in my custody, such as cleaning up trash on the side of the road, those types of things. So, and then the last request for this year, big request I should say, is for the 2 new vehicles, our 2008 Chevrolet Impalas that were handed down by the Sheriff's Department, completely rusted through, and they were sent off to auction. That leaves us with 1 hand-me-down vehicle from the Sheriff's Department this year, which I do appreciate. Don't get me wrong, but it's up there in miles. I think we're approaching 130,000 miles on a cruiser. And so we are requesting 2 new vehicles. The commissioners have opted to present a 5-year lease option. It's a lease to own option. It will cost about $22,036 for the 2 vehicles. The anticipated life of those vehicles for the Department of Corrections is going to be minimally 7 years, more likely based upon the miles that we drive, 10 years easily. Those are the kind of the major points to my budget this year. Happy to answer any questions.
President Silver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 questions. First of all, what is the current population of the jail versus the capacity?
Current population. So the current population as of this morning, we were at 65. The capacity of the jail overall is 144. Half of that is secure housing, half of that is what was built in the new community corrections center. So the difference in the building is half the building was built with drywall. We cannot put our pre-trial offenders over in that side of the building. So whereas we have a number of empty beds over there, we have not seen the sentenced inmates coming through the court system. And what that's actually left us with is a space problem in the secure portion of the jail for a good portion of this year. It's hard to say that we're half capacity, but out of beds.
The second question has to do with the revenue side. For the last several years, you have had grant revenue anywhere from $30,000 to as much as $52,000. The projected year end this year is $31,581, and you're projecting 0 for this budget. Why is that?
The grant line, we have no current grants. The last grant expired last year. There was a 1-year extension on it. It was a poetry grant. And we have no current grants.
Follow up. Have you applied for any grants that are pending application?
We have not applied for any grants this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I want to talk about MAC Clinical Services, the medical services contract of $752,000. I just went through and added up the line items that are no longer being used in 2022 in contracted nursing, medical service supplies, MAC Clinical Services, and contracted physician services. In 2020, the actual cost of that was $434,560. In 2019, it was $364,146. And yet this year, we're asking for $752,000. That is a substantial increase. Can you please explain that?
Yes, so what wasn't included in there was the cost of the county nursing staff, which we no longer have. We had three nurses, one of which was a county nursing supervisor, and those, we no longer have those employees. They have been removed from the full-time wage line. And the per diem nurses that we had on staff, those costs are saved.
Please. Thank you. So the per diem, where would that nursing, per diem nurse would have been, and what line item? And was the county nursing in the full-time wage line, was it included in the corrections department, or was that in the nursing home department?
No, it was included in the correction, so the second part of your question was, county nursing was included in the corrections department wage lines. Any part-time nursing that we had came out of our part-time wage line. There's no differentiation there for a 32-hour employee, a 24-hour employee, a per diem employee, a corrections officer, or a per diem nurse. They were all being paid out of the same fund.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the vehicle lease options you have here. The interest rate on that seems really high for today's interest rates. Have you priced around elsewhere or?
So I put that out to county finance. This is the forward lease rate, and that's with a fully outfitted, that it's a lease to own. I guess lease is probably not the correct, it's 3 payments, or in this case, they select the 5 payments to own the vehicle. So that's a completely upfitted, well, it's a downgraded cruiser from what the.
No, I understand. I just feel like that interest rate for today's rates is pretty high.
I couldn't disagree with you.
Thank you very much.
Representative O'Hara.
Thank you. I just had a quick question about the overtime. If we're fully staffed, do we have $100,000 projected?
Well, we do have, so when I say we're fully staffed, we were fully staffed as of like 2 weeks ago. This year, we've had times where staff is frequently mandated overtime, working doubles. I've worked shifts to cover staffing. At one point in time, we were down almost 9 officers of 24. So that this year, that tends to be what happens. We have fluctuations in staff that goes on. Plus we have the concert season. So during concert season, we have to staff heavier. We also have bike week, which again takes a lot more staffing. And then that's not to say, we have other things that come up during the year. We have leaves of absence with COVID still happening. I have a staff member that's on back-to-back quarantine periods where they can't come into the building, which then we have to backfill their positions. We always start with, if we can run without, we do. We run pretty minimal shifts to start with. There's not a lot of leeway there. Then we move on to our part-time help because that is the next cheapest option. But as I said, we're down to 4 folks that work that, and then we put it out to overtime.
Representative Howard. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking the question. I was reading an article last week about recidivism. And according to the article, we're seeing after a 5-year period, we're seeing about a 70% recidivism rate. We're going into our 5th year of the program we started here. Are we still tracking that recidivism? Do we know what our rate is at this point in time?
I don't have that number right with you, but I can get it. I got to be, completely honest with you. The way our jail management system is constructed and configured, just the nature of the software, it's very difficult to get you good recidivism numbers. We do track the core applicants to see if they come back individually, but I can't really give you a good comparison number to the general population. But I can certainly get you as much information, and I can get that back to you.
Yeah, because, it'd be helpful to know if we're, really saving any long run dollars here by doing this program, because as the county attorney says, crime is through the roof, so it seems like we're, again, throwing a lot of money at a losing battle.
Yes, thank you for your time. On your retention, you mentioned it was 40. In your feeling, why did we lose about 40%? We got now replacements, and what is your second question of this part? Your feeling of those are being retained after they've been trained and all, they won't move on. What is your feel of why we lost 40, and will these replacements stay long enough?
So I don't know how aware you are, I mean, this period of time is known as the Great Resignation, and employers are talking about 33% turnover rates in the last year. So we aren't immune from that, as we've seen. I can tell you that not one of my officers is left to go to another agency. As a correctional officer, I haven't lost anyone to go to work at a police department. I have lost them to go work private industry, Sig Sauer, where they were making more money and not being forced to work overtime, not having to work third shift. Lost people, to no government entities that I'm aware of. As far as whether the new folks will stay, I'm hoping, and I'm trying to treat them the best that we can and trying to make the best work environment out of an inherently negative one so that they want to remain with us. I think in our last hires, we have hired a lot of good people. We're really screening them, trying to make sure that their heart's in it before we're spending the time and money to put them through that process. We haven't had a lot of applications, and I've turned down about half of them.
Thank you. You answered my question. I'm sorry.
Would you up the volume for us
Yes.
back here, because I don't want you yelling at the superintendent, but we need to.
Sorry,
hear what's going on.
I didn't realize.
Go ahead with your follow-up.
Thank you. You answered the question because I thought they were leaving to go to other corrections. It was in my mind. So at least I was assuming that if we train new officers, they're going to move on after we train them. But from what you said, that is not an issue anymore for me.
Yeah, and to speak to that, 3 of the people I hired this year, I actually utilized other counties' training budgets to supplant my staff. So we're actually a fairly attractive county to come work for, but it is very difficult to compete with the other local businesses that are putting up big numbers for people to go work for those jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question again. Just to follow up on Representative Cloutier, one of the things that caught my ear was that we pay $550 to train, send these folks to train. Do we require any longevity when we send them to training? I mean, do we make them sign something that you must work for us for 6 months if we send you to this?
Yeah, per the union contract, that the corrections academy is not one of those items that we can require them to pay us back if they don't stay. However, I can say because of COVID, with the high numbers of turnover, I can only send so many people to the academy at a time. It depletes the staffing levels. So usually we can only send at most 2 people to an academy class. Most of the time, these folks, by the time they're going to the academy, they've already passed probation. They've been with the county for more than a year.
Thank you very much.
Representative O'Hara.
Thank you. Another quick question about staffing with us. When you do interviews, do you do any mental examinations to see if they are mentally fit to handle this position?
Yeah, so glad you asked that. What we do is we do a 2-part interview process that's a blind process where we have different members of staff, including myself, in the second part of the interview. We ask different questions. We evaluate different things. We do those blind, and then we come together and decide whether or not this is somebody we feel that would be a good fit with the department. Then we go into an extensive background process, which we send over to the sheriff's department, where we examine those aspects of their lives pretty closely. We used to do a psychological exam. It was fairly costly, and to my knowledge, nobody was ever said to not pass that. And I can say from my experience of working in police backgrounds for a rather large agency, we had nearly maybe 0.5% of our applicants were washed out in that process. Because if you spend a good amount of time looking at the background and you're highly critical, you'll see some of those character flaws will present themselves to the surface. We do a medical examination, and then we do a drug test prior to hiring them. And then they come into the facility, and if they start working with staff and staff goes, something not right here, we listen to that recommendation from staff if they're not responding to training, if they're saying things or they're acting in a way that's, I have no problem saying that you're not a good fit for corrections.
Thank you.
Further questions? President Lang.
Actually, it's more of a comment to the delegation. I just want to make it aware, we do have a bail reform law coming up. I'm pretty sure our 65 number is probably relative to PR bail and the bail reform. And there's a significant push in the legislature right now for a reform that PR bail, considering things happened in Manchester where a person got released out on bail for one offense and ended up committing another offense that was even more heinous, I don't say that word, and, was still given PR bail because of our bail law. And so there's significant pressure for that, which will dramatically probably change what's going on in the jail.
All right, thank you, Adam.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, before you step down, I just want to share an experience with the delegation briefly. The Board of Commissioners are required to tour the jail twice a year. So I've now done so, we have done so twice this year. And I want the delegation to know, and everyone here, that that jail is immaculate to an astonishing degree. And I think that is a testament to this superintendent and how he handles his business there. And I just want to be sure he was recognized for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adam, thank you.
I appreciate that. That's my staff. That I will pass that along. Thank you very much. And as the sheriff said, my door is always open. It's locked. You can knock. If the door doesn't pop right away, it's the server's resetting itself. But certainly, if you have questions, you'd like to come see the jail and see some of the challenges that we're facing, I'm happy to have you come over anytime. We're a complete open book. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From the nursing home, we have Administrator Shelley Richardson.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, they are. That's what Bill told me. So just to give you kind of a background on the nursing home right now, we have had some huge challenges with staffing. Our census is down to 63. We have 31 empty beds. We have a waiting list of about 75 people in the community. We have 92 employees. In my 16 years of being here, at the highest, we had 145 employees. So we right now currently have 23 openings. We have 7 RNs, 3 LPNs, 10 full-time LNAs, 4 part-time LNAs, and 3 housekeepers. The LNAs, I did look at a year-to-date turnover rate has been 70%. And for licensed staff, as far as LPNs and RNs, it has been 54%. We were very lucky that we didn't have the vaccine mandate go through. We had 19 people that were not vaccinated, 12 that belong to Belknap County employees, and then others that are with therapy and with Glendale, our dining services. We did have some exemptions that were approved in that, but right now the CMS mandate is on pause, so we're kind of waiting to see what happens with that. The residents, 99% of the residents, all but one, are vaccinated. In my budget, primarily the increases in the budget are representative of salaries, benefits, wages, due to contractual obligations and merit-based increases. Some of the budget lines you'll see have had a price increase because I've been notified by vendors that they either have gone up 3% to 4.5%. I also have some contracted services for new projects that are going to go up. We have a fire damper inspection and testing that is required every 4 years. That costs $4,800. We have an internal fire inspection, which costs $2,000. We have 7 workstations that need to be replaced, and that costs $7,200. We have outside pillars, 7 of them, that need to be re-bricked or restructured, because if you walked past them, you'll see the sand is leaking out. And that's gonna be about 41,520. At this time, the nursing home has not requested any new positions in the facility, and we have not requested any new equipment. We do have those projects that I spoke to. And right now, we have no new lines in our revenue budget. We expect to get $1.9 million in pro share. I don't expect any more money to supplement pandemic testing from the state. It was completed December 31st. It'll be done. We won't get any reimbursement. The nursing home grand total will be $13,452,940. It's a 14% increase from the amount last year. We went back and forth on doing the revenues projection. This is in anticipation of a 100% capacity census, which would be 12,152,000, which would be the amount for county taxes for the nursing home to raise would be 1.3 million to cover the net loss in the budget. Are there any?
It's a 2-part question, but they drive off each other. Is it, in the nursing field right now, is it common to have these very short staffing, and what is the driving factor you think behind that?
A lot of people took early retirement. COVID really took a lot of people out. Right now, the other thing, pay. Right now, agency nurses, you can get traveling anywhere from 70 to, I showed Mr. Huff the other day when he was in visiting, $178 an hour for a travel nurse. And I know the strike teams that are gonna be implemented in New Hampshire are getting between $200 and $300 an hour.
Representative Littlefield.
Hi, so now, do you have any specific contingency plan that goes around the money that would be coming in to effectively be able to recruit employees?
We just did a quick wage, like a gap stop wage increment right now to try and bring people up, because our LNAs were getting $12.79 an hour. So we wanted to bring people up to 15 for that, because a lot of times people would come in and they would bargain, try and get more money, but we can't give them more because our staff wasn't making more on the wage scale.
Representative Contois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on our discussions and our vote with ARPA, it's my understanding that the nursing home staff, based on a 40-hour week, got an additional $5 per hour.
Yes.
Every single person. So really that $12.79 is now $17.79. Is that correct?
Correct.
So when you say you brought them up to $15 an hour, so is that $15 plus another $5 an hour, so now they're at $20 an hour?
Correct.
Thank you.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. Under this strike team that the state's supposedly putting together, do you know the details of that? I mean, the way I'm reading this support for long-term care facilities in the ARPA program, the state's supposed to be helping the counties with these extra costs and shortages of nursing. Have you applied for any of that?
There hasn't been anything to apply for that I've seen. The strike teams, I think, are mostly going in to help with the hospital and rehab centers, so that the hospital can clean out people that are in there to free up beds for acute care.
Well, they're calling them nursing home strike teams. And it's for support for long-term care facilities. It's right here on page 10 of this. And this was produced by our National Association of Counties, which we're a membership to, that should have some information for us.
know about the strike teams. That's what you're talking about, the strike teams that the state is creating, and they're gonna relieve the hospitals by moving hospital residents to nursing homes. So they're gonna send strike
Strike
teams
teams.
into the nursing home to care for these people on a temporary basis. So the problem for us.
But when they leave, you don't have staff. So if you take patients and you increase your census, when the strike team leaves, you're gonna be shorthanded. You don't have any staff to take care of the amount of people that they might have put in your facility.
It's almost like downshift. God.
It's a lot like that.
Yeah. Great government we have. Thank you.
I think this is a question more for the commissioners, but who's responsible for applying the grants? Would it be the department heads or our finance department?
The heads file.
Representative Lang.
So I'm just trying to understand this $12 to $15 to $20 gap and what actually is in the budget. So what wages are in this budget? Are we now funding at $20? Is the $5 money coming from ARPA funds? Is that only a short-term fix? And when does that end?
The $5 was just a short term, wasn't it, from the ARPA, the premium pay? No, actually, it was a 3-year plan. $200 for the first year, $150 for the second, and $100 for the third. Does the premium pay?
Is that per week, per? All right, so if I can, I'm trying to still not only got a good clear answer to my question. So again, I'm trying to understand, so we've raised from $12.79 to $15. And is that the budget number we've used in this budget, is $15 an hour for the LNAs? Is that what this has?
I would say there is enough money in the nursing home wage lines to cover that. When the budget was prepared, we had not increased the wage rate from $12.79 to $15. That just happened last week. So the budgets have already been produced. There is enough money in the numbers you have. Probably there would be a need for transfers next year. Or
To the
during
$15 an hour,
Yes.
right? That gets us to the $15 an hour for all of next year, right? There's enough money within the nursing home, depending on what happens with the budget. But right now, you're projecting there's enough money in the nursing home. We can still cover that increase even though we didn't really budget for it.
That's
right. What about the other $5?
That is being paid through ARPA funds.
And is that ARPA funds have been set aside, just to make sure I get clear answers. Is that ARPA money that was set aside for all 3 years going forward? And then in 3 years, we'll be looking at a $5 drop in pay automatically? And we're trying to figure out how we're gonna fix that problem?
Yes, the idea was that the ARPA funds would start at $200, and each year employees would be getting wage increases through their contractual agreements anyway, so that after 3 years, the ARPA funds would come down, but their wages would go up. And yes, we have known right along that we're gonna have to increase wages for the nursing home. It's definitely going to cost more money.
One more, sorry. So, those are union positions or not union positions?
Yes, mostly.
The $5 an hour ARPA funds, is that included when we give a 3% raise? Is it the $15 an hour and a full $20 an hour and you get a 3% on the 20 or 3% only on the 15?
3% on the 15.
Yep.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarity, my understanding of that vote we took in September, I believe, to approve the ARPA money to be used for this program, we only funded to the end of this year, correct? Thank you.
Representative Conto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the wages for the LNAs, based on the conversation we're having, only the folks that were under the $15 an hour got a bump. Is that correct? Get an increase?
No. That's not correct. All of the nursing home, not all of them, most of the nursing home wage scales moved. So most employees got a wage increase.
Thank you.
Is that administrative and nursing or just nursing?
It is mostly, it's nursing, maintenance, housekeeping, most nursing home employees, not managers, outside of direct nursing.
Okay. Further questions for nursing home administrator? All right, Kelly, thank you.
I'm sorry, one more
Okay,
question.
go.
We talked about this whole strike team and what it's gonna do by shifting patients from the hospital beddings that are stuck in hospitals right now because of what's going on in the nursing homes. How many patients do you anticipate getting? You said you have 31 empty beds, 63 patients. Are we expecting we're gonna get any of those patients?
Not right now, no. We don't have the staff. This morning, we came in, we have one nurse. Because you have people that either have COVID, their family has COVID, they're sick. I've got 2 people that are almost delivering babies pretty soon, so we're short there. I'm trying to get contracts signed with 4 nurses. We've got somebody.
And finally, we have our Untitled County Administrator, Deborah Schachter.
Good evening. I'm Deb Schachter, County Administrator, primarily responsible for the administrative budgets, the IT, finance, and human services. I'm just going through them and touching on them quickly. The administration budget is up 5% from last year. That is primarily due to the Association of Counties dues that was not put in there last year. It was distributed between corrections and nursing home. This year it's been put back in administration, so that's increased the budget. And belonging to the Association of Counties, I'm just gonna make my plug that it is very important for us. And so regardless of where it ends up in the budget, we just need to participate. The IT budget is up 18%. That is due to our computer replacement program. We need to replace more computers in the general fund than the nursing home. So it's putting the bigger part of the increase on the IT budget this year. Finance budget is up 13%. That's due to our staff turnover. We've had 2 of the 3 positions turnover. And the wages and benefits are reflective of that. And the human services budget, which is actually the biggest budget in the county, is showing a 3% increase this year. That's because we're expecting roughly a 3% increase from the state in July when they reset the rates. That's all I have, and if you have any questions for me, happy to answer.
Representative Silver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the budget report of the expenses that was sent by your office to all the delegation and the printout. And I'm looking, there's a column that is not headed. There's no heading on the column to the far right. And at the end of each functional area of the county, it shows a percentage. So looking at the percentage on total county administration, it shows 5%. And you indicated that there was a 5% increase. Now, when I take my calculator, which seems to be pretty efficient, and I take $419,179 proposed against $390,965 projected year end, I get an increase of 7.2%, not 5%. And basically in every single functional area of the county on these printouts, where there's been a percentage increase number, the number in the right-hand column as a printout is much lower than the actual number that my calculator says. Do I send this back to Hewlett Packard for repair, or are these numbers wrong?
I think that you can calculate it probably differently. So when I'm doing it, I'm doing a different calculation than you are.
I believe the percentage is 2022 proposed budget from 2021 budget.
Correct.
Not the actual. So if on my calculator, let me take 419,179 divided by 399 477, I get 5%.
That's exactly.
So the difference is from one budget year to the next budget year. Not a comparison of 22 budget to 21 actual projected.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Howard, thank you, Chair. I have a question about the line in the revenues, the transfer from opera funds.
Yes.
So the commission is showing a $9,164,632 that will be in those funds for 22. Then it shows the $1,391,854 that we already approved spending in this year's budget. I was under the assumption that we were getting two payments of $5,800,000. Well, that's quick math, 11,400,000, right?
It's 11,800,000.
Yes, it's just shy of $12 million.
All right, but these two numbers don't add up, because it only adds up to 500,000 and 5.
Right, there isn't a plan to spend all of it yet.
So there's still another balance of money out there that's not accounted for anywhere?
It's accounted for somewhere, it's in a bank account, and so it gets, reconciled and it's accounted for. It's not, we don't have a plan, there's no one is asking to spend it right now.
Okay, so we're planning on spending the $9,164,000 this year.
That is, the request is to appropriate that money so the commissioners can spend it during the year, that's right.
Okay, so when will we get any details on that?
During the, I don't know if the executive committee, but as you discuss the budget more, that's obviously gonna be a significant part of it.
I'm sorry. All right, I'll let you go with that. What do you mean?
It's in capital projects, so whenever you talk about capital projects more, that's where those numbers are.
Okay.
Anything else for the administrator, Representative Lang?
Run through the fund balance one more time, where we stand on it.
All right, can I just go back? Let me pull over here where I can put it on the screen for you. So we started 2021 with 5.6 million. Right now, we're expecting that we're going to have a deficit in revenues of 1.1, almost 1.2 million. That will have a surplus in from expenditures of 1.2 million. The delegation voted to use 3 million to offset taxes from last year. That would leave 2.6 million. So the fund balance policy is that we will keep a minimum of 3.5 million, not exceed 5 million, and not use any more than we put in the prior year.
Wonderful. So what's the projected, so 2.7 is what we have right now. At the end of this year, will we be adding anything to that, or are we taking from it? What are we doing? I misunderstood your statement.
I don't, okay, let's see.
We started with 5.6. We allotted, of that 5.6, we allotted 3 million to go to this budget for the one we're just finishing up. Right, so that leaves us 2.6 million left over.
That's right.
And we're gonna spend 100% of the funds this year that we allocated and have no fund balance left over to add or subtract from that?
About $63,000.
So the biggest piece of that is the shortfall in revenue.
The revenue shortfall is equivalent to the surplus, so.
What department was the big revenue shortfall in of that much money?
Nursing home. Representative O'Hara.
Just a quick question, what does the fund balance do for us? Does it help us with credit? Does it help us with?
Helps us with credit, definitely. That's one of the primary things when Moody's assesses our credit rating. They want to know that our fund balance is stable and how we plan to grow it. So it definitely has hurt us in that respect. Luckily, we don't go out to bid or don't bond very often, but the one time we needed it, our credit rating was dropped because of the fund balance.
Do we expect it to drop again with this type of figure change?
Yes, I'm sure it will.
Representative Littlefield.
What is it going to cost the county to participate in the NHAC with the dues at the 5% increase?
I don't have the bill from the Association of Counties. I think it's about $15,000. You have the number total?
And that's with the increase to the 5%?
Yes. And that spreads through the county. They specifically apportion some of it to nursing homes, some to corrections, and then the rest is just general. So that's the rest is what's in the administration budget.
Any further questions for the administrator? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah, anything else from the commissioners?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As most of you know, I've been on your side, and it's always a daunting task going through this budget submitted by commissioners, line item by line item, and making adjustments as the delegation sees fit. I think this year, obviously with all that's going around, it'll be especially challenging for you. I want to make sure everyone here knows that the department heads, the employees, the county administrator, and the board here are here to answer any questions. You have our contacts, you have our emails, you have our cell numbers. So please, if you have any questions, if something looks hazy, if you feel you're lacking on any data that you need to make an informed decision from the executive committee's work to the full delegation, I hope that you'll feel comfortable reaching out to any one of us.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, at this time, I'll open the floor to public comments. Step up and announce your name and your town of residence.
Sure, thank you. My name is Jamie Irving. I'm representative of the Belknap County Conservation District. Last year, we were approved for 50,000, which was down from 60 the year before. This year, we're seeking again to 50,000. Just a couple quick numbers. If based on the recommended budget of 33 million, 50,000 is 0.15%, which actually equates to about person owned a $200,000 home. It's about 35 cents a year. You guys have all heard what we've had to say in the past couple of years. I've been part of the BCCD for 4 years now. So I'm not going to recycle the same arguments as to why we really think that this 50,000 is money worth spent. But I wanted to bring attention to the stream restoration work that we've really had some great success with over the past couple of years. To date, we've done a stream restoration in Alton, Stamberton, obviously the one up at Gunstock, and we're slated to do one in Meredith this coming year. So if the Meredith project happens, we'll actually be doing in-stream restoration work on Reservoir Brook, which feeds Lake Waukewon. Lake Waukewon is Meredith's drinking water supply, and I don't know if you guys have noticed over the past number of years, the lakes have gotten greener. We're seeing a lot more of this cyanobacteria issue. If anyone has friends or has a place on Lake Kanasaka, the past couple of years, the lake's been shut down a number of times due to cyanobacteria. This all has to do with basically nutrient loading into these lakes. So cyanobacteria basically can shut down an entire lake. If a dog wades in a bloom, it'll kill a medium-sized dog. It'll get people very, very sick. So one of the benefits of the stream restoration work is we're slowing down that nutrient loading into the lakes. The only reason why I bring up this is because in years past, you guys have generally wanted to see, well, not as much individuals benefiting from our programs. This program benefits communities at large. Meredith is a great example. Just the fact that Lake Waukemon is the town's water supply. So although the stream restoration work is a small part of it, it's an important part of it. So we just encourage you guys to read through the packet that we provided. There's a lot of really good information in there. And thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Further comments from the public? Please step up, state your name.
I'm David Osmer, I live in Guilford. Mr. Chairman.
What was that last name again?
Osman, OSMAN.
Thank you.
I appreciate what you're all wrestling with. I came to a commissioners meeting the other evening to talk about the budgetary issues in a general way, problems facing the nursing home. And you're all doing your jobs. And I know Representative Silver's got a calculator, I'm sure it works well. And I've looked around at the technology here in the room. The one thing none of us have is a crystal ball. And I think what we're facing here is a lot of demographic change, a lot of need in the future for nursing. We don't know what that's going to look like. So I think as you pass this budget, hopefully robust enough to do what you have to do to face the immediate problems that we're facing with staffing issues. That's, I think, the heart and soul of the issue that we're listening to. I hope you can try to keep in mind what the future might look like. When I mean the future, I don't think it's that far away. And I think if you go out too far, you can make mistakes, but if you don't go far enough in preparing for this, you'll make a mistake too. And I don't know what the answer is, but I would suggest to you that there needs to be a process where you can put some guardrails, try to keep the politics and the tension out of it, and think about the people that have paid their dues in society and ultimately have to go into a nursing home where they don't have the resources. We can complain about the reimbursement rates and all of that. We have to do this right. And I think if you pitch this properly to the taxpayers, they'll understand it. I looked at my tax bill, and our house is in Guilford, it's assessed at about what the average house is in Guilford. And we're paying about $1 a day, two of us living in this house, for the county portion of it. And even if the percentage increase for this nursing home is substantial, and I think it ought to be, I think that the burden on the taxpayer is not going to be unreasonable if you do it right, if you have that vision. And that vision has to come with a process where the community's involved, it's collaborative, you listen to the experts. There's an expert right over there, she's been in the trenches for a long time. So listen with an open mind and an open heart, you'll get there. But some of this is going to cost us money. I'm just telling you as one taxpayer, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Suzanne Demers from Community Action, and I'm guessing this is the time when you're hearing from outside agencies.
Sure.
It's a little different than normal.
We'll talk again in detail, most likely, but
Okay.
give us a summary today.
So we're coming today with just 3 programs. Typically, we've come before in the 3 years that I've been working for Community Action. We've come with 4 programs. We're only coming with 3, and that's Meals on Wheels, Mid-State Transit, which we changed the name from RTS to Mid-State Transit, and our Senior Companion Program. So all 3 programs we're totaling asking of $56,000. We've heard everyone speak today for, you know, I think the last maybe to talk. And I can tell you that, like everyone else, we're facing staffing shortages. The most increasing things are gas that are really hitting us and food. The raw food alone, 20%, I saw an increase this year. So for Meals on Wheels, it's exorbitant. So any questions at this point? You said that you'll go in more detail at another meeting.
When we get into the details of the budget, we'll certainly have questions for you, but I thank you for the
Thank you
introduction.
for your time.
Further public comment? Last call for public comments. All right, thank you very much. We'll close public comments. And at this point, members, do you have anything to add or any general thoughts on the budget you want to throw out there?
Next steps.
Next steps. Okay. That'll be, the question is, last year we went through, the executive committee went through the budget in detail and brought back a recommendation to the full delegation. What is the feeling of the delegation as to that process, and any changes wanted or over there?
I just think we should add more input from, have more of the delegation involved with making that specific budget. Instead of just the executive committee.
How would you like that done?
I'm gonna think about it, it's just a thought that came to my mind.
Okay, Representative Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having been around the budget process since 2010, I can speak that having the executive committee is probably the most efficient way to do it. In the 10 years that, over 10 years, I've been doing involved. And we have gotten great feedback from the department heads that they actually find this a much easier process to deal with. The executive committee has to entire delegation all at once. But feel free to, that's my 2 cents.
Representative Silver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that when the executive committee meets, as in the past, in examining the budget in detail, it's a public meeting.
Indeed, always.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that the full delegation refer the budget for further study to the executive committee as done in the past.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Representative Littlefield seconds the motion. Discussion. Representative Lang.
So I actually agree with Representative, there, sorry, Travis. I'm saying Travis, I'm like, that sound please. Only in terms of, I think last year, especially, I guess I'm thinking more because we have the ARPA funds involved right now with a mixture of $9 million of expenditures. That the idea of adding I'd say two more members to the executive committee, especially, sorry, I don't take offense to this, but our newer members to the delegation so they can better understand the process, because I don't know how many more terms Barbara's gonna run for, and having some people would have some understanding of the process that might stick around for a little bit longer as new reps staying for a few more terms. It'd be helpful to have people that have the institutional knowledge by being involved in the process, rather than being involved in the process at the end of the process. Be involved in the details of understanding what that budget makeup looks like. So I'd like to amend Representative Silver's motion by adding 2 more people and recommend that we have Representative O'Hara and Travis. And
One gets it right, it's
and
okay.
Representative Boje.
I don't accept the amendment.
Is the proposed amendment seconded?
I second it.
All right, discussion on the motion.
So,
Representative Morris.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Originally, the executive committee had how many members? Before this year.
Previously, it had been 7.
And we had shrunk it down, so I feel adding 2 members back to it would be a great service.
Okay, Representative Hancock.
I'm confused because are you asking two people to be added to the executive committee or two people to be added to the budget
To the,
process?
for the budget process, so the
Okay, I just
executive
wanted to
committee,
clarify
okay, no,
that.
I was a little
call
unclear on
it, call it the executive budget committee.
There we go.
Just, I'm lacking a little clarity on this.
My motion was to refer to the executive.
Well, we have an amended motion, so.
And motion to amend.
A motion,
And add two more people and Representative Travis.
O'Hara and who? Clear. Okay, discussion, Representative Loge.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it'd be nice if I had a little warning on this.
Sorry, Tom.
I am available to attend the meetings.
Okay, and just a little more clarity, you're looking for voting members of the
Budget committee.
budget, so the budget committee would be the executive committee plus two,
Two.
all voting members.
All voting members, so there you go.
Okay, further discussion?
Excuse me, so, Mr. Chair, so we're adding two by this amendment, and the two persons have already been named. Is that correct?
Correct. So if the amendment passes, then we just, the first motion is to increase the motion is to create the committee, and then we're gonna expand it by two, and if we approve it, we vote for the approval, and then we vote for referring it to that committee.
Representative O'Hara.
I'd like to echo Tom's comment too, that
Sorry,
I didn't
Tom.
know about it, but I would be available for it too.
Okay, so I would just say that, of course, as we did it last year, anyone is certainly able to come and participate, more than others, so the educational opportunity is always there to come and watch. Obviously that, as the previous method, would not be voting members. So that would also increase the quorum requirement, so that would be 4 would be required for a quorum as opposed to 3. Okay, so are we ready for a vote? Representative Cloutier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, this is, still thinking about this. I don't want to add any added expense to the county. That would be another $40 per meeting. Watching this, I'm wondering if 2 more pay per meeting is really beneficial to the county taxpayers. I can attend myself and give input, and I trust the 5 that were on there last time to listen and understand my position. So, saying that, I'm wondering if we do need 7 or not, and I would just like to make that known.
Okay, Representative Howard.
Yeah, we average 5 or 6 meetings during the review of the executive. So, you mentioned 2. Did I misunderstand?
Two people.
Oh, you were talking about 2 people.
Yeah, it's 2 people, it's not 4.
I just want everybody to understand, we have at least 5, maybe 6 meetings.
We can afford the $200.
Question for county admin probably, are we required to turn these in if we don't want you paid for those meetings?
Whether you turn them in or not, you're going to get paid.
Yes, could you enlighten me as to the history here? What I heard was that the executive committee used to consist of 6 members? 7. So at one point, for how long a time was that?
So my first term, we had the entire delegation try to do the budget all at once. That was a little bit of a disaster my first term, and then the second.
You want to give us a year, please?
It was 17.
For those of us who have not been around.
17, 18.
17, 18?
17, 18, 2 terms ago. We tried to do it with the entire delegation and that.
Oh, not 17, 18, but 2017.
2017, 2018.
I'm
old, I'm not that old. But 2017, 2018, we tried with the entire delegation. It was a little bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then the next term, we decided to do it with the executive committee, but the executive committee was made up of 7 members. So we had a broader range of members to be able to be involved in the process, of which aren't here anymore. And then this term, we shrunk the executive committee, which kind of drops the members out of the process, so to speak, that would normally be involved. And so my idea is, I don't want to change the size of the executive committee, but I think that in the budget process, I think it's a good idea to have a few more voices to go through that process, and have the details, down in the weeds that we use.
If I might, so is it your reflection that the one term that the executive committee consisted of 7 members, that the budget process was more productive?
It was much more smoother, I felt.
Representative Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All I want to say is that last year during our budget process, Representative Cloutier was there just at every meeting. So I'm just about.
Okay, are we ready for the vote?
Do I have to place a roll call vote?
No, I think we can have a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion to add 2 members, Representative O'Hara and Cloutier, to the executive committee for the budget detail.
Well, it's not the executive committee, it's
Budget committee.
Budget. So all those in favor, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those opposed, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The motion fails. Back to the main motion,
Still one.
which was
Refer the matter of the budget examination to the executive committee for further deciding.
repeating that for me. All right, any further discussion? Before we go to that, let me just check with the administrator. What you had previously liked the executive committee process, is that still favorable for the administration?
Having a small committee and the same committee, because prior to even the full delegation, the delegation would break into subcommittees, many different committees. And that got a little chaotic, yes. So I think I can speak the whole, for everyone, that having the whole budget process done by a small group is definitely easier to deal with, I think, for that group as well as for all of us.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the input. All right, so all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
The ayes have it. The chairman of the executive committee will put together a schedule for us to start reviewing the budget. As always, I like to finish things early. Second.
Can I just ask a question?
So we'll do that. Although Glenn's not here, members of the committee, is everybody available to start, like at 6 o'clock, that thing?
So I'm off the entire week of between Christmas and New Year's if you need to do any days.
Okay.
I can just let you know that.
So do you have days available during that week? Okay.
Deb had a question too.
I just wanted to just throw this out there. For Representative Lang's idea of passing the torch. Old folks who were mentioned also mentioned that they were okay with not getting paid. And since it's a public thing, I just think we should still get it.
Sure, and we also have live streaming, I assume will be part of the process. Ms. Schachter, you had something for us?
That's similar to what I was just gonna ask, is it still okay for any member of the delegation to attend those meetings I think that always makes it easier on us as well, if more of you
Sure.
are.
Yeah, the technology is there, we should certainly use it. Representative Terry.
So practically speaking, the only substantive difference that we're talking about here is that if other members of the delegation attend, as they're welcome to attend, they would not have vote. And therefore would not have an opportunity to file a minority report if they disagree. Whereas if you had 7 people, as was discussed before, there might have been a majority report and a minority report on the budget. That is a possibility. Well, that's what I was seeing. Thank you.
Can we, get the chatter down a little bit? Representative.
As far as us attending the meeting, are we attending just to listen, or are we committed to put in our opinion also?
We'll certainly be happy to hear comments.
Sure.
The budget process is usually pretty informal and take comments and public input. Okay, anything further that I'm not aware of? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned.
Sorry, Mr. President.
That's all right.
Just like your idea